Who stepped up in Oklahoma's win over Auburn?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more and go place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. And the Oklahoma Sooners, they picked up a big win over Auburn on the road inside Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday, and they needed a big team effort to get it done. We've talked about Michael Hawkins. We've talked about what happened on defense. But, Jay, was there a position group that really stood out to you on Saturday that maybe we hadn't talked about just yet?
To be honest, I think the one that really stepped up to most is the linebacker room, right? You saw Danny Stutzman start the game off right with a really good tackle on the running back, and they just all stayed active. You saw him and Kip going around, and we'll talk a lot about Kip in the next, segment, but they really were everywhere. They were flying all over the field. And it's funny because, everybody that was talking about the team over the last few days, the one thing that was pointed out most was the team was starting to look tired, right? The defense was starting to get worn. And I get it. Majority of the games of this season, we were on the wrong side of the possession numbers. Just about everybody had over 30 minutes of possession with us in the mid-20s. So you could tell that they were starting to feel that gas. The good thing is this year we don't have not one, but we have 2 bye weeks. And if you want to count Maine, that's kind of a third bye week. So shout out to the SEC for always having everybody play at least one FCS game. But the timing is perfect for us because it's going to put the perfect amount of gaps in to get our bodies right in preparation for the big games. And to me, though, John, the linebacker room, they were all over the place. They were flying around. And I honestly feel like that's probably the room that stepped up the most when we needed it the most.
Well, and it's a group that you feel great about going too deep with. Like, legitimately, you feel good rolling Danny Stutzman, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Samuel Masigo, Lewis Carter, Jaren Kanak. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and you feel good about it. And that's really the Brent Venables, Zach Alley effect, right? You've been recruiting the defensive side of the ball really, really well. You've recruited over the last several years, and you've gotten that group established to where you feel great about it, man. Yes, Danny Stutzman is an elite player, an all SEC defender, and the drop-off when he comes off the field is not nearly as significant as it was a year ago, especially 2 years ago. Remember, 2 years ago in 2022, you had your 3 linebackers all playing nearly 1,000 snaps. That's not going to be the case this year, because the linebacker depth is so much better. For me, Jay, when I'm looking at the position groups, man, the offensive line I thought played much better than what we'd seen. Now, it's healthier. You get Branson Hickman back, not on the injury report. Jake Taylor was back. He was listed as probable throughout the week, wasn't on the final injury report. And so you had the 5 guys that you expected to be your starters in fall camp. You actually had them all on the field at the same time. And that was huge. Now, listen, Michael Hawkins got sacked a few times. He did. But his average time to throw, according to Pro Football Focus, was 3.44 seconds on average. That's really good. Now, he scrambled around a little bit, but even under pressure, his average time to throw was 5 seconds.
That is bananas.
That's pretty good. When they were blitzing, his average time to throw was 3.19 seconds. Like, anything over 2.5 seconds is money. That's gravy. And your offensive line is giving you more and more time. And I think that's a really good sign. Was it perfect? No. Was it absolutely clean 100%? No, it was not. But it was much improved from what we'd seen the previous 4 weeks of the season. And that's a great sign for moving forward. If you can keep this group healthy, keep them together, now you get a bye week to where they can work together and not get injured. And then you've got game prep week for Texas. You get 2 weeks to get these guys cohesive, get them better communication. And I don't know, I just made up a word. It's fine.
I love it.
We can do that. It's the 21st century and we're in the new media realm. We can make up words. Because what does Thor say? All words are made up.
Touche.
And so the chemistry, communication, all of that stuff can get even better as we move forward. So I thought that was really nice. And one thing that really stood out, I think, is the way that they communicated. It looked like they were just more in sync with their own communication between themselves and Michael Hawkins. Like there was more active communication, especially on that goal line when, Oklahoma gets the 4th down stop and it's 1st and 10 from the 1. And a similar situation that you ran into a week ago against Tennessee, Michael Hawkins was talking. He was communicating very clearly, making sure that everybody was on the same page so that we didn't have another safety. Because that safety last week spiraled the team.
Yeah, I think that was the play that made the team kind of felt helpless, right? And you don't want that. You don't want the team to start feeling like, okay, yeah, we have no chance. But no, I think one of the underrated things you talked about that people should need to hear again is under pressure, Michael Hawkins had roughly 5 seconds to throw the ball. That is crazy. And it's just a testament that the offensive line was playing a heck of a lot better. And now he wasn't perfect in that situation. He was 50% completion, 2 for 4 in that for 36 yards. But there was a lot more clean pockets than there was without. And he actually completed about 70% while blitzed. That's pretty good. And that was on 7 attempts, 5 for 7. So shout out to the offensive line. They really do look like they're starting to finally gel. It's funny. I have one guy, he's a Texas fan that spends a lot of times in my comments, but he's a ball knower. He's actually logical when it comes to being a fan. He's not delusional. But one thing he talks about is that he's like, the one thing he hates the most is that Beaton Bow always figures out the line by the time they play against Texas. Never fails. He's like, yeah, I'm not concerned about y'all's line like everybody else is. I may have questions. He's like, but Beaton Bow always figures out that darn line before us. He's like, it'd be nice if he wouldn't have the line figured out until after the Texas game. That would put a smile on my face. And so it cracked me up, but he's right. Like this week is a testament to that. We start to get the bodies back. And even though I'm not a big fan of Sexton playing guard, he looks like a tackle playing guard. And I'm just going to be honest, it just doesn't look like it's natural for him. Right. But you kind of have to play your 5 best players at this current moment. And as much as I love the younger guys, they're just not putting up the numbers that you need initially. Now, granted, next season, I think this line could be a monster, right? And I think that those guys will get their weight up and get their nasty streaks going. But yeah, you need to play your top 5 guys. And because you have to play your top 5 guys, having Sexton at guard, it seems to show an improvement, especially in pass pro. And that's going to be the most important thing because Michael Hawkins gives you that time, right? He plays well moving around. What I want to see at him, and I think we'll talk about this probably tomorrow. This is probably one of the best topics, so make sure you make a note of this. We need to talk about what more we need to see out of Michael Hawkins in preparation for next week, especially during the bye week. What he needs to do this week in preparation for next, because I've heard a few people talk about some ideas, and man, I have a few more to add to that, but I digress. The offensive line definitely has. That's a great pick. I want to go back to the linebackers real quick, though. The one thing that jumped out to me with the linebackers the most is just like with the offensive line was the communication. You saw them really talking to everybody on the line. You saw them talking to each other. You saw them shifting around together. They looked like they were getting themselves prepared. Now, granted, to start the game, they looked a little tired. They started to look at, they weren't as flashy once we got to that touchdown, but the big thing was they were flying at the ball still. You still started seeing swarms of us at the ball. And that's something that I'm so glad that we've seen over the last couple of years. That's probably one of the most underrated components of having Brent Venables as your head coach. Now with Zach Alley, who has that similar mindset, you're seeing them all the time, multiple dudes flying to the ball and getting their helmet on getting their arms wrapped up on the defender. I love that about this defense now. Yeah,
team tackling matters. You're going to miss tackles from time to time, but there's going to be somebody there to clean it up, and that's huge. And that's been a nice change during the Brent Venables era of Oklahoma defense. Kip Lewis is one of those big guys that stepped up for the Oklahoma Sooners. We're going to discuss what he means to this team coming up next. And it's time to highlight my Roy Player of the Week. Roy is a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. Download Roy for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. This week, we've selected Kip Lewis. Because, hey, you can give him $100 on Roy. If you were impressed as we were with his performance on Saturday, you can show him some love too. Just hop on Roy and throw in a few bucks. If everyone pitches in just $10, it adds up fast. Now you have the chance to show your appreciation for Kip Lewis and his standout performance this week, as well as what he'll continue to bring to the program. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Again, shout out to all the everydayers out there. And hey, Kip Lewis, man, he was really, really impressive. He's been a guy that, as you look at the developmental process of players, he comes in the 2022 recruiting class, didn't really play much that first season. And then in 2023, wasn't a starter until about midway through the season. That Texas game really stood on his head, stood out, and was an emphatic player for the defense. And now he's one of your best players on defense.
He is, man. And I had put out a tweet about that yesterday, and unfortunately forgot off one key player. But at the same time, that linebacker room is in great hands going forward, right? We're going to miss the heck out of Danny Stutzman just because he's the heart and soul of that defense, and you can tell. But Kip, I think Kip's going to take the reins as the dude going forward right afterwards, right? So you'll have Kip, you'll have Kobe, you'll have Lewis Carter, who I accidentally forgot about, the Crimson Missile. You'll have him. You're going to have Kanik, right? Omosigo. And then you'll go down the line to the young players. We are in a very blessed spot to have linebackers that's built specifically for Brent Venables and Zach Alley defense that's going to continue to hold up. That and the safeties, oh my goodness. Absurdly talented. We're going to have some fun going forward. So don't expect this defense to fall off at all. But no, shout out to Kip. This is what our second player this season to get Defensive Player of the Week in the SEC. That's huge, right? Now I'm hoping that we, once going to Red River, that we get a national or a Bronco Nagurski Defensive Player of the Week to go right behind this one, just like we did last time, right? Absurd game. He played lights out, and he played his heart out, right? You can tell that he cared. And I think that was my favorite part about the rewatch, John. I was going through, looking, I'm like, okay, who on this defense is really turning it on and trying to do something? And every time you looked up, you saw Kip Lewis with major claps. You saw him getting into plays. You saw him getting everybody pumped up. And I was like, yeah, Kip cares about this game. I don't know what it is. There's something about this game that got him hyped. And I think it was because it looked like we had low energy. And I think he wanted to fire everybody up. He was everywhere in this game. Yeah. Every time I looked up, he was in the backfield, grabbing somebody's legs. He was back there pushing somebody back to make the play harder. He was getting the tackle. Everything that you were looking for from a player in this game, Kip was giving it to you. And I see why he got that. I mean, outside of the pick six, that was great. Finished with 5 tackles, total 4 of them solo with the tackle for the loss. And then he had that pick 6. Kip was involved in so many plays. He was everywhere. And I'm glad that he got that and got that recognition, because to me, that should open up everybody's eyes as to how good of a week that we actually had in that game. Now, it wasn't the prettiest game, but it was a good game overall.
Well, and that's in a game where he only plays 31 snaps.
Which is crazy.
Did
not even think he only played 31 snaps.
Right.
Bananas.
So he was that impactful on less than 50% of the snap count on the defensive side of the ball. He was 4th among linebackers in snaps. And that's not if you include Trace Ford as a linebacker, which Pro Football Focus did as an outside linebacker, then he was 5th among linebackers in snaps. So let's get Kip on the field a little bit more, because he definitely brings the juice. He brings the energy. He, like you talked about, he brings the heart. He just has those different intangibles that you're looking for, but he always plays fast. I mean, he just plays like he's got roadrunner legs. Like he's just always moving quick, always moving fast. And that's one of his great strengths. I'm sure that they came into this game thinking, hey, we need to be able to control the box, control the run game. And that's why you're seeing a lot more Danny Stutzman, Kobe McKenzie combinations. But you got to figure out a way to get Kip Lewis on the field more, because despite the size, the guy plays bigger. He plays above his weight class. And as he's added size, he's gotten stronger, and he's gotten better at handling those second level blocks, taking on offensive linemen and still being disruptive. Again, 31 snaps, and he had 5 tackles, 4 stops per Pro Football Focus, which takes into account down and distance. And then he got the pick 6, man. That absolutely was the play of the game because it gave Oklahoma the lead. It was the game-winning touchdown, the game-winning score, and put Oklahoma up. So, you tip your hat to the kid because, again, we talk about it all the time. The developmental trajectory for every player is just a little bit different. And you saw Jaren Kanak was the guy that kind of got a lot of the run as a true freshman, was the starter going into 2023, and Kip Lewis overtook him, And so those initial depth charts are good, but they don't always tell the whole story. And you love to see a player just continue to earn his spot, earn his time. And he's going to be another impactful player when you take on Texas, because again, that's a team that's a very dynamic team that's got, a good passing attack, and you're going to need somebody with that speed, especially out on the perimeter, to go and make plays. And I think we'll see a lot more Kip Lewis that week than we did this week.
No, I agree. Him and Kobe together were insane. And that's going to be your linebacker setup next season, right?
Yep.
Once Stutzman moves on into the league, you'll have Kobe and Kip playing together a lot. You'll see a mixture of Carter and Kanak together after that or whatnot. And yeah, the linebacker room is safe. And it's funny because talking about Trace Ford, I forgot. One of the young players was telling me that they call him the big cheetah. He plays the big cheetah role. That's why he's listed at linebacker or outside linebacker, because he plays kind of it's more of a 3 when we go on our 3-man set. He comes back as a quote unquote linebacker, and so it's more of a run stuffing setup. But he's also pretty solid in he's really solid in coverage, right? When he steps back, he's pretty disruptive out there at linebacker. Yeah, he's got them big arms, and he does a really good job of knocking down passes, and he also does a really good job of blitzing on the edge. But one other thing too that jumped out was on that pick 6, how he was able to get in there, block or hit the blocker. Like he basically ran in like he's going to blitz, and then he was able to go back. And if you notice, he started stumbling because it looked like he was trying to get back a little bit faster than his legs was letting him. But he still stayed upright, got the tip, caught it, and was able to run that bad boy back. That, to me, masterful job. I love talking about that play because that jumped out to me as the film room was definitely studied heavy. They knew that was coming, in which, at the same time, we can critique the competition on that one. Why in the heck would Hugh Freeze throw the ball 3rd and 4, and your running back Jaquez Hunter was out there getting roughly 5 yards a carry? Right now, I know that deep in the game, the defense was turning up the intensity. Why in the heck though would you actually run the ball? That's a situation where you need to go ahead and pull that bad boy, not passing you to just keep handing the ball off. Why would you pass it? But we love it, of course, because that gave us the dub. Yep. You could see the panic out of them as the game was getting late because of the way that the offense was starting to churn, as well as the way the defense was playing. Yeah, we put in work late in that game the way that we needed to.
Yeah, Keegan Renault on social media shared a video that you could see Brent Venables basically celebrating before the pass got thrown because he saw what was coming. And again, just a masterful job by Zach Alley and Kip Lewis completely baiting Peyton Thorne into that throw. Again, quarterbacks are taught to throw to where the blitzer vacated, and Kip Lewis, he'd vacated his spot for a second and then dropped back right into it. And just a really, really well done, well drawn up defensive play call against what they were wanting to do, because it was going to be open. If Kip Lewis was actually blitzing, that slant was right there, and it was going to be a completion for a first down. And that is a very, very different ball game the rest of the way. But,
John, be honest, that looked exactly like me at quarterback on College Football 25. That's exactly what it looked like. That's the interception I throw all the time on that dang game. Is I drop back and I'm trying to hit a slant because I know a blitz is coming, and somehow a linebacker just magically shows up. Yep. What is this? Peyton Thorne looked like me throwing the ball on the video game.
Yeah, Kip Lewis teleported like Nightcrawler right back into that passing window, picked it up, and showed off that speed, man. It was incredible. So shout out to Kip Lewis again, 2nd defensive player of the week in the SEC. Oklahoma's got a defense, guys. This is going to happen more frequently. Who could be
excited?
Next? Can't wait to find out. Hopefully it's somebody during Red River. We'll discuss Red River over the next couple of weeks. We'll get you ready for that as well. Oklahoma's moving up in the polls.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And so like right now, going into this week, we got to buy. But there's one line that looks a little wild to me. Texas A&M is a 1.5-point favorite at the crib against number 9 Missouri. So everybody's thinking that, I bet you everybody's taking that Missouri bet right now. Honestly, I'm thinking Texas A&M may surprise us, but you can do that on FanDuel. They'll get you taken care of. So, but one cool thing is you'll get started with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So, go on over there to FanDuel.com and put a bet in.
The Oklahoma Sooners moved up in both the AP and the USA Today coaches poll after their win. They moved up from number 21 to number 19 in the AP top 25 and moved up one spot to number 17 in the coaches poll. Listen, after kind of what the offseason was, all the discussion about Oklahoma's offensive line, the fact that they were kind of ranked in the mid-teens was kind of surprising a little bit. At the same time, this is a talented football team on the defensive side of the ball in particular. How do you feel about where they're at right now with the bye week ahead of Red River?
With all the movement that we saw in games like Utah losing to Arizona, which Arizona keeps hurting me. I don't know why they keep hurting me. They just love hurting me, right? When I pick them, they lose. As of late, when I don't pick them, they win. Yeah. Right. It's a baffling thing, John. So I'm just like, why do y'all treat me so bad? But with all the movement and everything that happened with all the losses and stuff, the Ole Miss loss, right? Louisville losing, that's a very fair spot for us to be. I like us in the between 25 and 15, right? Just because we're still trying to get the offense going. But to be honest, with the way that we're getting better week over week, the offense, we're seeing progressions. We're getting progressively better. I like the fact that we're still staying in that range. I think it's a fair spot for us, right? The coaches poll 17, the AP poll 19. Of course, AP always hates us. But if we can pull off this upset, man, there's no excuse not to throw us throw us in the top 10, right? And I think that the offense is going to show out a lot more than people expect. Yeah, true freshman quarterback, but we've seen a true freshman quarterback play against Texas before, right? Actually, decent Texas team. We'll say that. That 2021 team was okay, I guess you could say. But I can anticipate that we'll go out there and look a lot better than what people anticipate. And I see that the line hasn't even been dropped yet for that game. So that tells me that the odds makers are still trying to figure out what exactly to do and to make of us and them. But John, there's like controversy when it comes to who's sitting here at number 1 now. And this is what's fascinating. Texas was number 1 in the AP poll and number 2 in the coaches poll last week. Right. This week, they moved up to Alabama moved up to number 1 AP poll, but then moved down. And then moved up to number 2 in the coaches poll. And Texas actually moved up over Georgia. So it was like a Georgia-Texas thing. Now it's a Texas-Alabama thing. I'm intrigued that the coaches, or their assistants, actually think that Texas is better than Bama, and the AP thinks Bama's better than Texas.
Yeah. So, hey, I put Alabama at number 1 in my SEC power rankings over at Sooners Wire, just because they've got the most significant win on the season. Actually, they've got, arguably 2 really significant wins. That big blowout of Wisconsin just a few weeks back, plus this win over Georgia. And again, like, they kind of went to sleep a little bit in the second half. You're up so big in that game, and they kind of let Georgia back into it. Now, Georgia kind of played some hero ball as that game went on and were able to work themselves into the game. But listen, that's a really good Georgia team that's going to be a playoff team. And Alabama jumped out to a huge lead early in that game. So I bumped them up to number 1. Again, the most significant win of the season in the SEC for me. Listen, that win against Michigan for Texas was really good. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't. That's a really, really good rushing offense, but their quarterback situation is cheeks. It's terrible. So Oklahoma, this in Red River will be the best quarterback test Texas has faced this year, even with Michael Hawkins as a true freshman. He's a better passer than anybody that Texas has faced this season. So listen, Texas is a good team. I'm not going to sit here and hate on them and dunk on them and say they haven't played anybody. They've played who's on their schedule and they've beat them emphatically.
Yeah, everybody.
I just think Alabama right now has shown to be the best team in the SEC and the best team in the nation.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Now, the one thing I'll give to Texas is that going to the big house and beating Michigan and making Michigan basically submit, that was to me a little bit more impressive than I thought, right?
Yeah,
and it's only because Michigan plays bully ball. That's their game. Their game plan is to muddy the game up, run it down your throat, push you around, and Texas didn't allow it, right? They made them go be one-dimensional. They said, nah, you're not going to just run down our throat. You're going to pass that ball. You have no choice. But Michigan can't throw, right? They don't have, and they don't have a quarterback. I mean, you would think they would play more Alex Orji, but Alex doesn't threaten you even as a runner because he really doesn't pass. You know that when he gets the ball, he's probably going to run the ball. They're not throwing it. They played Davis Warren the entire game, and he wasn't good.
Inaccurate. Terrible.
He's very much inaccurate. He was trying to give the game away, it felt like. And so now Texas got to go up against a quarterback, luckily, that not only can run and scramble, but he can launch that thing deep. So it's going to be fascinating to see what Texas' game plan is for Michael Hawkins. I mean, I wonder if they're going to go out there and look at him as if Caleb Williams is playing again. Buddy of mine was like, man, I think that Michael's playing similar to the way Caleb did as a freshman, and I could see it in some ways. Other ways, I have questions about some of the decisions that we need to make sure that we have him make, especially in a game of this magnitude. It's going to be, I mean, if you thought Auburn was hostile, he's about to feel it now, which I know he's been to some Red River, so he understands that. But at the same time, yeah, it's going to be a lot of different animals. Because truth be told, I feel like the Palace was louder and more rowdy than it was. Well, technically it was based upon the decibel readings, right? The decibel readings when we played against Tennessee was one of the highest since like LSU a couple years ago. At its peak, it wasn't as brutal as I thought. Now, fans were getting a little bit into it, but you could tell that they kind of quit on that team. It was pretty bad. Like the ticket prices, John, they were cheap. They were very cheap to move down. Those Auburn fans kind of was like, yeah, we're done with this team. They just washed their hands. And I see why. They break your heart so often. I mean, so it's a tradition as old as the game itself. It's pretty depressing, but at the same time, I do like that. Overall, I do like in the polls that we're sticking where we are, and I think it's a safe spot for us right now.
Yeah, I'm not too terribly concerned about Michael Hawkins in Red River. He's shown that regardless of the situation, the environment, the circumstances, the guy's got the mentality to withstand it. You know, coming in down 19-3 at the end of the second half, he looked comfortable. Going into Jordan-Hare Stadium, he looked comfortable, even backed up at the 1 yard line in his own end zone, trying to navigate and orchestrate the offense to get out of the end zone. So at least Luke Elzinga has more room to punt from. So I'm not at all concerned about what his headspace is going to be like going into the Red River Showdown. Will he be under more pressure? Probably. It's a really, really good Texas team. It's a much better Texas team than Auburn is. But I think he's got the mentality to hold up under that pressure and hold up under the weight of the circumstances. He's just shown that he's got the right stuff. He just has the right stuff to play the position and to go be successful. And now you got 2 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks by the time you get to Red River of first team snaps with your healthy offensive line, with a wide receiver crew that is starting to show out a little bit more. And hopefully Deion Burks gets back and you can make him a part of the offense as well. I don't know. I feel okay. Do I think Oklahoma is going to win? I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know yet. I don't think we should put our prediction in until next Wednesday.
I mean, I've given you my preseason predictions. I've given you preseason predictions that I think Oklahoma can win the game. We'll see. We'll see where we're going to be at come next Thursday when we drop or Friday when we drop our actual predictions. We'll have our crossover with Locked On Longhorns next week as well, so that will be a fun time, I'm sure, with a lot of stuff being thrown around. We'll just say that.
A lot of yapping
from those folks over at Locked On Longhorns who are feeling themselves with Texas at 1 and 2 in the polls. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Also, go check out the Locked On Sooners Insider Program. You can join by texting Sooners to 405-817-6711. You'll get your first 2 weeks free. And again, you can interact with Jay and I over there. Ask us questions that we will feature on the show. That's at 405-817-6711 to join the Locked On Sooners Insider Program. And also go follow the show over on all the social media platforms at Locked On Sooners. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer.
Sooner.